Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
I'm Matt Gorley.
And I'm Amanda Lund. Join us for Keys to the Kingdom,
An unprecedented peek behind the curtain of the world's greatest theme parks from the people who have all the best stories.
the characters,
Raise your hand if you're permanently disabled from working at Disneyland.
Over the whole thing is a giant jumpsuit made of 100% yak fur.
And I got some very interesting sexual propositions as a giant Klingon lady.
Looking down into the tram, undoes his pants, and begins to urinate directly onto the tourists.
Keys to the Kingdom, out October 16th.
subscribe now.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
On today's Smart 7, Israel rejects ceasefire calls, Party Marty testifies at the COVID inquiry, and lots more. It's Tuesday the 31st of October, it's Halloween, and happy birthday, Willow Smith.
The Smart 7. It's news, but not the news.
Hamas released a video of 3 Israeli hostages on Monday evening in what appears to be an attempt to apply pressure to the Israeli government. It came as Israel's ground invasion appears to be underway, with tanks approaching Gaza City from 2 directions. The humanitarian situation in Gaza continues to worsen as the International Criminal Court warned that blocking or delaying aid could constitute a war crime. There was still no prospect of a ceasefire, though, as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made clear in a speech delivered in English on Monday evening.
Calls for a ceasefire are calls for Israel to surrender to Hamas. That will not happen. Ladies and gentlemen, the Bible says that there is a time for peace and a time for war. This is a time for war.
In the UK, there has been political fallout from the weekend's protests, with a Tory MP, Paul Bristow, sacked from his front bench job because he wrote a letter to Rishi Sunak calling for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. Home Secretary Suella Braverman spoke out against protest marches, calling them hate marches because the protesters showed support for Palestine. She's also warning that the UK is keeping a close eye on the potential for domestic terror as Rishi chaired a COBRA meeting on Israel.
As Sir Mark Rowley himself said, there is an accelerated terrorism threat because of what's happening, and it's vital that we keep a close eye on the developing situation.
The official COVID inquiry has been quietly working away, interviewing all of the key figures involved in the pandemic, but it may be 2027 before we get to see a final report. The current module is due to see Dominic Cummings and senior advisors to Boris Johnson testify this week, including a review of their WhatsApp messages from during the pandemic. First up was Martin Reynolds, the former principal private secretary to the Prime Minister, who became known as Party Martis after an email leaked in which he invited 100 people to a bring-your-own-booze lockdown party.
There was quite a bit of unease in the civil service around, and I excuse my language, the so-called shit list of people who were thought to be at risk in what was perceived to be a potentially more muscular approach to the civil service.
There's been plenty of testimony about Boris's plan to let it rip and how his tone changed after he himself caught COVID. The WhatsApp messages have also proven to be extremely revealing, and Martin was questioned over who chose to switch to the disappearing message function in April 2021.
I can only speculate, but I imagine he hadn't realised that all of his WhatsApps would become public via the COVID inquiry.
Russia's war on Ukraine continues, even as the eyes of the world are on Israel. There are nightly reports of drone and missile attacks, and shelling continues in the Kherson region. Ukraine is expecting delivery of the first F-16 fighter planes to a Romanian training centre within 2 weeks. They're the first to be donated by the Dutch government, and they could potentially have a huge impact on the war. In the meantime, Chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Tory MP Alice Kearns, is warning that the world needs to remain vigilant, and now is not the time to slow or withdraw support for Ukraine.
Russia has upped its bombing campaigns in Ukraine. Russia has also upped its bombing campaigns in Syria. There is no question that while the world's focus is rightly on the appalling situation in Israel and Gaza, that other autocrats are taking the opportunity to try and make progress.
It can be easy to lose track of Donald Trump's many court cases, the documents in Florida, the fraud in New York, the racketeering in Georgia, and of course the January 6th insurrection case in Washington, D.C. But he's also facing trouble in Colorado as activists look to block him from even appearing on the ballot there because of his involvement in January 6th. Article 14th of the US Constitution prohibits those involved in an insurrection from running for office again. This is a case that will probably end up in the US Supreme Court. Trump's legal team began their case by muddying the waters.
Frankly, President Trump didn't engage. He didn't carry a pitchfork to the Capitol grounds. He didn't lead a charge. He didn't get in a fist fight with legislators. He didn't goad President Biden into going out back and having a fight. He gave a speech in which he asked people to peacefully and patriotically go to the Capitol to protest.
Still to come on the Smart 7, Cliff Richard is getting ready for Christmas and tributes to an American ice hockey star. Right after this. Welcome back.
We don't hear much about professional ice hockey in the UK, but this weekend saw a tragic incident in Sheffield. 29-year-old American Adam Johnson was playing for the Nottingham Panthers against the Sheffield Steelers in a Challenge Cup game on Saturday night. There was a tragic accident which saw Adam seriously injured on the ice, and he subsequently died from his injuries in hospital. Police have now opened an investigation and fans have been leaving tributes outside the Nottingham Arena. Chris Ellis, press officer for the club, spoke to BBC Nottingham and paid tribute to Adam and the impact he'd had on the club.
What was evident early on was the type of guy he was. He was a humble guy. You often get guys come over here that have played in the top leagues and they think they're probably too good for this league. Adam was totally different. He was a humble guy and he made a very big impact on the club in a short space of time.
There are 3 people in this world that we only see at Christmas. No, not Uncle Mike and his new wife and baby. I'm thinking Michael Bublé, Mariah Carey, and the original king of Christmas, Cliff Richard. Cliff popped up on the BBC for a chat and to promote his new autobiography, A Head Full of Music. At 83 years of age, he's also planning a tour and a Taylor Swift-like movie of his concert, but he definitely has no plans to enhance his performance with technology.
Obviously, I don't want to retire, but I'm probably going to stop. Like a red light. See the red light, you stop. If it goes green, you think, okay, I'll go now. So I've left myself open to still be available to do things as long as I can. Fortunately, I can still sing. That's the main thing. And I don't need AI for help. I won't need it, because one minute that I can't sing, I won't do it anymore.
There's a new mystery black comedy on the way. It's called Manodrome. It tackles toxic masculinity in today's society, and Jesse Eisenberg takes the lead role as Uber driver Ralph, who is struggling to make ends meet. He's introduced to a pretty intense male self-help group run by Adrian Brody, and well, things kind of spiral from there. It's sort of like Fight Club meets Taxi Driver, and it hits cinemas on November 10th.
Why are you here, Ralph? I lost my job. The baby's gonna be here pretty soon. No respect.
What do you do with those feelings? You know you could be a part of our family.
You've been listening to The Smart 7. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. Hit that follow button and have a great day. Give us 7 minutes and we'll give you the world.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
I'm Matt Gorley.
And I'm Amanda Lund. Join us for Keys to the Kingdom,
An unprecedented peek behind the curtain of the world's greatest theme parks from the people who have all the best stories.
the characters.
Raise your hand if you're permanently disabled from working at Disneyland.
Over the whole thing is a giant jumpsuit made of 100% yak fur.
And I got some very interesting sexual propositions as a giant Klingon lady.
Looking down into the tram, undoes his pants, and begins to urinate directly onto the tourists.
Keys to the Kingdom, out October 16th.
Subscribe now.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.